Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we're going to be diving into the world of self-managed supers and why so many people are choosing to go down this path, as everything the government's doing is making private asset ownership harder and people are turning to gold, silver, precious metals. So we've got George on from Uptrade, our OTC partner, and Matt on from Tax on Chain. We're going to be talking about the pros and cons, the timeframes, who should do this, some of the failures they've seen, and all the ins and outs of this. So welcome to the channel, George and Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. It's a great opportunity. And just a quick intro. So I'm the broker team lead at Uptrade, like a boutique in crypto brokerage in the investment world. And then we've got Matt, just a quick introduction.
Yeah, my name's Matt. I go by merlo.eth online. I'm the manager at Tax on Chain. We're a specialist tax and accounting services firm, and we just specialize in doing the same things that your local tax accountant does, but we specialize in servicing people in the crypto space.
Cool. Well, I might start with you, Matt. We've seen recently in Australia even some of those smaller super funds collapse, and we spoke about the way things are heading, where the government looks like it's going to want to tax your super more, and even the deal that Albo's just struck, where it looks like it's going to be sending $1 trillion of Aussies money overseas the next few years. So all these sort of reasons why people want to take control of their own future financially and the assets that they own. So what's the sort of time frame to set up a self-made super? What amount should you have? What are the fees involved? And how does that all work? When should someone do it?
Definitely a big part of that. I know a lot of people, when they decide they want to pull the trigger on something like this, they want it done yesterday. So knowing the timeframes is important. 3 to 5 weeks on the averages seems to be the turning up SMSFs with us. Around $50,000 is the recommended amount. There's no hard and fast amounts. So with that, you've got to be mindful of costs. So we average, on average, it tends to cost around $2,500 to $3,000 a year. So keeping that in mind, you'd want to make sure you've got something at least more than $100,000 so that it is worthwhile when you do take into consideration the costs of running this thing. Especially when you compare that to what your APRA regulated fund might be charging you, which can sometimes be about 1%, maybe more, maybe less, but on the average is around that 1% mark.
Okay, cool. And what do you see the people have jumped in? They're in a rush to do it. What have they done wrong, and what do you think people have done well when they're setting this up with that enthusiasm initially?
Yeah, you do definitely need to curb your enthusiasm. I think the biggest thing that trips people up is knowing that this SMSF is a completely different beast. It's not the same as what you do in your personal investment accounts. And there are tight rules and regulations so that people are doing this so that they can save for their retirement. Where people do get tripped up especially is not registering accounts in the name of the SMSF, accidentally sending assets either into the SMSF from personal accounts or sending assets to personal accounts from their SMSF account. So sometimes what we'll say to people is if you use one bank, maybe use another bank to set up, purely just to foolproof yourself. And that may be the same for exchange accounts. Also, some of the recent, choke points we'd call it, with on-ramping crypto or on-ramping cash into digital currency exchanges has been a real issue. Macquarie is probably one of the better known examples of that, where they were pretty friendly, and then all of a sudden blanket ban on a lot of digital currency exchanges. And I know in George's case with Uptrade, that's not necessarily the case. They seem to have had a bit more success with that kind of thing. So it might be worth passing over to George to sort of explain how they've been able to do some of that too.
Indeed. Sure. Yeah, look, banking issues in crypto are ever present. I'm hoping that with ASIC releasing financial services licensing for this space, that in the next 6 to 12 months, this all gets washed out. Could take longer. Depends how defensive the banks want to get with their policies. But thankfully at Uptrade, we don't tend to have issues with on-ramping SMSF funds into the market. We're a little bit more private and discreet in how we do our operations. That's why we're working really well to, especially with larger amounts in the SMSF, anywhere from 200 to 400 grand. People are typically wanting to send that from their bank And what they find is that they go to send it to an exchange in Australia, and the bank just refuses outright. And what they do is they go create one bank account, swap it to another bank account, the same problem. Because the banks have all flagged all the exchanges, and it's very problematic when, in a bullish environment, when Bitcoin's going up, up 1% a day or whatever it is, and people are trying to get in and get exposure, and it's very challenging. So the way we set up our banking infrastructure is a bit more discreet than the average. So thankfully, we haven't had any issues from Macquarie or any of the major SMSF banks that people typically tend to have.
Cool. And do you want to maybe talk about, I'm not sure, Matt or George, both, these kind of trends of people getting in gold, silver, Bitcoin, and the types of people that you speak to? And I think we're all probably of a similar mindset with the way the world's heading. But yeah, what are those trends you're noticing?
Yeah, a lot of the trends are around people just being, there's a lot of my clients, for example, very successful business owners, doctors, lawyers, surgeons, cardiologists, business owners. They're in theory, they feel like they should be rich, and everyone looks at them and thinks, these people are successful. But when they start thinking about all the taxes, the hidden inflation, they actually come to me and, behind closed doors say, look, we actually just don't feel like we're getting ahead, right? And that's at the front line. And so there's a huge trend where people are trying to find alternative assets. I had one big property developer client tell me his building costs went up about 80% to build a construction. So he's trying to find ways to outpace that. And a lot of those investment vehicles typically are emerging assets which have higher risk. We all know that, but these are people that are wanting to try to find outpaced returns to combat inflation and taxes, but also to have sovereignty over their investments. Being the custodian of their assets, they actually own the underlying asset itself. And this is where Bitcoin, in its essence, is such an amazing asset to have as part of an SMSF for some people. Yeah. And gold and silver.
Anything to add to that, Matt?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, we see a pretty broad representation of people. It could be someone who works at a local grocery store. It could be someone as successful as a multi-billion dollar person that has done really well out of either crypto generally. We've seen some people, I've been in the space for about 8 years now, so I've seen some people make it from zero to where they are now, which is really cool to see. And yeah, it doesn't really matter too much about who you are and where you came from. People are starting to realize they're coming to the same conclusions, and they're realizing we need to figure out a way to outpace the cost of living, inflation, and they're realizing that these store of value assets, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and other crypto assets, is a viable solution.
I think one thing I've noticed as well, I don't know if you guys have got some thoughts on this, is that people are starting to realize, well, if I'm just in my regular Aussie super, a lot of them are just putting me into, say, like the indexes or property funds and trusts that aren't necessarily the most liquid things. And we've already seen some problems in, commercial real estate, cracks start to form and that type of thing. But not only that, they don't really love these big tech companies with what they've been doing with our data. And then it's overseas or in Australia, there's a big, percentage that is just the banks. And that if you're going to be putting into the indexes, and we see Commonwealth Bank's one of the most expensive banks in the world and that type of thing. So I don't know if you guys sort of notice those where people go, you know what they're putting me in automatically isn't really the things that align with what I want to be putting my money in.
I've definitely found that. I think a lot of people, to be fair, may not realize that they have a say in how their assets are invested. They may just be in a default fund that balances what they are invested in, and that's totally fine. And if you don't like that, you do have the option to pick other investment mixes, but a lot of the time it's not really enough. When people go down that rabbit hole, they realize, no, you know what, I want to have full control over my assets. I want to have complete say and oversight over my future. So that's why a lot of people are coming to realizing that SMSFs may be a viable option for them. And I mean, you only have to look at the stats to see that it's getting to become a huge industry within the superannuation space. I mean, SMSFs are now, as of June 2025 stats from the ATO, representing 1 trillion in assets under management. And I mean, only 3 billion of that's in crypto, but it's still off the mark. It's definitely a non-zero number, and I mean the sky's the limit when you see the amount of activity in the crypto space. I'm very bullish on the space generally. I'll pause there before I go on too much of a rant, but yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing on our side of things.
And Matt, isn't there a fact which is this is the first year in, say, 22 years where there's been a huge uptick in SMSFs being set up, and the main driver of that is simply to invest in Bitcoin, given the interest? Is that something correct that I've heard in the space?
I would say empirically, based on what we're seeing and the amount of demand that we're seeing, that is very true. Whether that's the case across all of the broader industry, it is hard to tell, especially with the stats that we get from the ATO. They do lag quite a bit, but definitely from what we've seen, there's a huge uptick in interest, especially as soon as BlackRock and a lot of institutions started offering their wrapped products on listed exchanges, and even after we started getting some of these digital asset treasury companies listing and buying up BTC, ETH, and a number of other assets of recent, it's, I think, further legitimizing the space, and that's leading more and more people to realize this is an asset class that's here to stay. I can't get that kind of asset class exposure through my traditional APRA-regulated fund. My best solution then is to go and open up a self-managed super fund and do it myself.
So for people, as you say, you have to try and set this up as a longer term thing, and you don't want it to be your trading account or anything high risk. But people are still able to, if they think that, hey, I've had a really good run on this asset, sell it, maybe once or every 2 years or something. You can still do a trade, can't you, and rotate from the thing you invested into US dollars or into gold, or just sit on the sidelines until you think there's a pullback coming in the next year or two. So you still have a bit of flexibility. That's right.
Yes, that's right. You could trade in your super fund if you wanted to. There's no limits saying that you can't do that. For me, I work a full-time job. Things are pretty busy at Tax on Chain as it is. So I personally don't have the time to also very closely monitor an asset portfolio for my self-managed super fund. So I do exactly that. I may jump in and out of trades every once in a while, but they are very few and far between. And we do encourage that for a lot of our clients too. I mean, for me, I've seen the most successful clients be the ones that have just bought and held Bitcoin throughout the years. We've had some that timed their purchase around August last year, and they're sitting on multiple X returns year to date. We've even had a client that got in before the big XRP pump around October last year. He put in $600,000 of his super into an SMSF, bought full port, purchased XRP. He's now sitting on $3 million. So definitely not a bad problem to have, that's for sure.
Not that we recommend you to do that, by the way, or any decisions in that nature.
On that note, no financial advice. Do your own research. Reach out to us if you want to talk the tax side of things, but outside of that, don't copy trade us.
Is there anything else we haven't touched on today from either of you that you think is important for people that are thinking of setting up a SMSF?
Yeah, I think that crypto is a highly emotional investment, and people can get carried away sometimes. And if they have 200 grand in their SMSF, they go and put the majority of that into some AI bot. So I think having the right people to speak with firstly is super important to help build a bit of a strategy and understanding of what does the typical journey look like. Like most people try to keep their, and this is more on the investment side. So we touched on the on-ramping issues with the banking challenges. It's also the on-ramping in terms of the getting your account verified with a brokerage or an exchange. Having a really fast service is key, and a bit of a way to get in fast, to get your account created, because of the complexities with paperwork and documentation. As you know, exchanges are great to do it yourself, but from a service standpoint, they can be a little bit slower. So if you do want to take advantage, I know Bitcoin obviously is down at the moment, and we're in this corrective wave, and gold also. And I guess if you're wanting to get in fast, you need to have really good platforms and systems to get in, and also be able to speak to someone. So the key thing there is also, let's say you do want to invest that. Well, people typically keep it more in the lower risk categories, the more established assets, even majority in Bitcoin itself, and just trying to keep that the bedrock of their portfolio, of their sort of SMSF investment amount into the crypto asset class. They would keep majority of that into Bitcoin. Yeah. And so I guess the next thing is that people don't think about is, well, it's great to store it somewhere in a wallet or a ledger, but if you get hacked, if that seed phrase gets lost, if you pass away, it's knock on wood, something were to happen, well, what are the safeguards in places to actually pass on those assets to the next of kin? And people don't realize that. It's their retirement money. You've worked so hard. So being able to work with, I guess, a brokerage or a system that has a lot of assurance, firstly and foremost, that you won't make those same errors of sending one wrong button or letter and it just vanishes into thin air, or going and putting all of it into an AI bot and realizing that it's gone overnight, or three, just getting hacked and scammed. And that's where, having the right systems in place. So we don't have the same risks that exchange do, because we're not stored in a hot wallet. They're stored in a cold wallet of sorts, and it's institutional grade security. Super important. It's why a lot of clients work with Uptrade for the SMSF assurance and security, and they can sleep peacefully at night knowing that if they were to wake up in 5 years, it's still there, it's unscathed. Even when Bybit got hacked, or the top 5 exchanges, if they hypothetically collapsed, it wouldn't really impact us, because we don't store our funds there. It's through one of the safest forms of custody in the industry. Super important when it comes to protecting what you built. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you touched on something important there with that emotion. We saw that last week when so many people asked me how to get in gold and silver, and I made that video and said, guys, you don't want to chase a parabolic chart. Wait for a bit of a pullback, and sure enough, we had like the biggest dip ever in gold over the next 3 days. So it's always important to make sure you're not doing this emotional and feeling a rush, but still planning for long term. But anything there else to add, Matt?
I do like what George touched on there about estate planning. That is a big part of what we assist a lot of clients with, not just getting into your SMSF, but then also planning with the end in mind as well. Like George said, you do want to make sure that you've got your assets secured, and that may be a foreign concept for some people if they're not used to doing that for their personal assets, or even just with their superannuation. It's been looked after by a large APRA-regulated fund, and it's not something they've had to think about before. But it is definitely something you need to be mindful of when you do decide to take full control over your superannuation. Retirement planning is also a good thing, not just for making sure you have enough money to retire on based on the lifestyle you want to live in retirement, but also for tax purposes as well. I think the biggest thing that people may be sleeping on is the fact that even though superannuation is already a pretty concessionally taxed environment for their assets at a flat rate of 15%, when that money gets put into pension phase, when you start drawing down a pension as soon as you can access it, that drops to 0%. So a lot of people may not realize I'm taking profit on a trade here, but if I'm age 59 and I'm turning 60 in the next 2 months, can I wait? Can I turn that profit into a completely tax-free trade? So those are the kind of things that we will frequently help a lot of clients with, helping to plan ahead for their retirement, making sure that they have not just managed but also optimized their tax position. Even with some of the strategies as you get towards your twilight years as well, making sure that if you do have money left over, that you plan to give to next of kin or to surviving kids or grandkids, making sure that it is stored in such a way and that the right paperwork is in place so that they don't have to pay as much or any tax as soon as you pass that on to them. So those are some of the things, and they can be huge value adds for people when they start talking to us about it.
Fantastic. So, guys, I guess a lot of our audience will be familiar with Uptrade for the OTC orders and for tax advice, Matt, as well. But what's the first step if someone wants to change their standard work super and go into a work super? Who should they contact, and where should they go to?
I'll let you take that one, George.
So if you're wanting to discuss setting up an SMSF, if it's not already existing, you can maybe get in touch with Matt from Tax on Chain, probably one of the best crypto tax specialists in Australia. I think many SMSF funds, they're good at SMSFs, but understanding the nuances of crypto is very key. So yeah, I think Matt's been phenomenal in terms of speed as well, getting it set up. Time is of the essence, especially when it can take up to 5 weeks. You want to really have good, quick service. And also handling everything from the accounting side as well. So with the collaboration as well, we provide end of financial year tax reports directly if your client provides permission to Tax on Chain. So everything from the onboarding to the tax return submissions is all handled. You don't have to worry about all those headaches that happen in the background about plugging in wallets into different software, the tax software, and all that stuff takes a lot of time. And I sure don't have enough time for that. But yeah, I think it's been working really well, and I'm really looking forward to continuing that as well.
Yeah, we do work really closely with Uptrade as well, and part of that service, if you come to us and you would like us to help you set up an SMSF, is that ability to collaborate in the background with Uptrade to make that onboarding experience as frictionless as we possibly can. There is still going to be some things that you will need to do, and we're there to help you along that journey from start to finish, and you being ready to invest and pull the trigger on what you're planning to do. So I would definitely say reach out to us. We'll have links in the show notes to direct people to our website, and we've got a bookings page that people can sign up to have an initial conversation, either with myself or someone else in our team. We've got a pretty cracked lineup of people in the space that can help you out. If you're interested, please reach out. Just remember too, it is your super. It's going to be something that is going to be around for a very long time. We have done our best to make this as fast and smooth a process as possible, but don't forget, you've got 3 weeks to 5 weeks turnaround for something that's going to be something you manage potentially for 20, 30, 40 years. So don't feel like you have to rush in either. As much as I would like to say to you, let's get it done. Definitely exercise some due diligence, do your research, make sure that it is definitely right for you, so that this is a good news story for your family, not something that you try to hide under the covers like so many have in the past as well. Not necessarily with super, but just crypto generally.
Yes. Fantastic. Well, I'll put the links below to follow George and Uptrade and Matt and Tax on Chain for the guys at home. But any final thoughts, George?
No, it was more just the ability to, the biggest topic in everyone's mind is tokenized assets or real world assets. So being able to buy, as an example, tokenized gold through Uptrade, silver as an example, or even just Bitcoin itself. It's such a beautiful component, not having to change different platforms or products, being able to do it from the one location. It just makes it a lot easier when it comes to multiple tax returns and having different applications. So that's something I'm really looking forward to the next few years, is getting more and more assets on chain and just being able to operate from one location. So for an SMSF, it's perfect because you're keeping administration down, you're keeping all your tax reporting down, and it's also all custodied under the one roof for security as well. So just wanted to leave that as a passing comment. But I think, it's great. There was just such a big alignment in our audiences as well, my clients and yourselves. It's all, it's a pretty small world, this industry, and everyone seems to have similar demographics. So we just love what we do and want to make sure that we have a safe place for everyone to go to.
Fantastic. And any final thoughts, Matt?
No, I think that's it. No, awesome. Thanks very much for having us on.
No, it's been a great chat. I hope everyone at home has enjoyed this, and I'm sure some of you are using their services already, but we'll have to catch up with you guys again in future and talk trends and everything happening. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Alex.
Cheers, guys.
Pleasure.